Hello, hello, and welcome back to the Black Girl Iowa podcast. I'm your host, Emily, and I'm very excited to bring you guys a really awesome episode today. And before I do, just want to talk about a few things that have kind of been going on since my last episode. First and foremost, yes, I did celebrate a birthday. As of last Friday, March 7, I turned 39. And instead of having a big party with my friends and going out on the town and wearing a super cute dress that I bought, I got sick. We're still recovering from an ear infection and a sinus infection. So if my voice sounds a little different, I'm just now starting to sound like myself. Granted, I'm not 100% yet, but being sick on my birthday kind of put some things into perspective a little bit. Number one, regardless if you're sick or not, that day's still coming. So I still did enter my third run around the sun here. But ultimately, though, the day was okay. I just really hung out with my dog, watched Harry Potter. I think I got through like the first 4 movies, and then I ended up passing out at some point. I went to the doctor, though, and it was really nice to like go through Facebook and stuff like that and like see all the birthday wishes and stuff. So if you reached out, called, text, posted on my Facebook or my Instagram or even over on TikTok, thank you so much for that. That really did uplift my spirits as I've just kind of been in the house the last few days trying to get better. Another thing, though, that I do want to talk about, and I feel like with what is happening today, this is like perfect for the conversation that I'm bringing to you guys today. So 2 things. Number one, as of today, which is Monday, March 11, 2025, today is the National Day of Rest for Black women. So Black women all over have been encouraged to really just rest. Don't do anything too strenuous today. If you have the time and availability to take the day off, definitely do so. But really try and be in service to yourself as opposed to in service to someone else. Another thing that I found out today that I did not know about is that today is actually Harriet Tubman Day. So this is actually the day that she died. But as you guys know, Harriet Tubman is the reason why so many slaves went from the deep South up to the North through the Underground Railroad. Today, I am recovering from being sick. I have been resting the majority of the day. But I really think with today's episode, the one thing that I really want everyone to kind of really think about is, how do you give yourself rest? I feel like, especially as Black women, we are on the go all the time. I think I said in the episode last week with Dr. Destiny Woodruff is that I feel like the 24-hour woman all the time. When do we give ourselves rest? When do we relax? When do we stop and say, you know what? It's all above me now, and I'm going to take this time. I'm going to take it for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and get into the interview. And then I will come back and talk a few things about my reflections from the interview and just how I feel about this whole concept of rest, how it relates to how we can advocate for ourselves and also advocate for one another. Enough for me. Let's go ahead and get right into the interview. At this time, I'd like to introduce today's guest. She is from the Windy City of Chicago and a graduate of the Kenwood Academy, class of 1995. She has her Bachelor of Arts degree in social work from the University of Iowa, which she attained in 2003. She also has 2 graduate degrees. The first is a master's in public administration from Drake University, which she attained in 2012, and a master's in health administration from her alma mater of Iowa. She is the founder and CEO of Mahogany Doula Services, where she emphasizes healthy and happy birthing services for women in the Des Moines area. In addition to her business, she is also the program manager for clinical integration at Molina. She is also heavily involved in the African American Leadership Academy as an advisor and a member of the United Way of Iowa Essential Needs Committee. When asked about her experience at Iowa, she said, "I love the pace, security, cost of living, and serenity of Iowa. I appreciate the people and their passion and dedication to paying it forward." So, ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary friends, I'd like to welcome the one and only Latoya Lewis of Mahogany Doula Services to the show.
Thank you.
You
Thank
are
you so much for having
welcome.
me.
Yes, I'm as someone who does not have children, I just have a dog. I want to make sure that I'm leveraging this podcast as an opportunity for doulas to really talk not only about their craft, but about why it's important to have a doula and really advocating for your patients, which I think is really important. And it's something that we're definitely seeing more and more of. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with you. I'm so happy that you're here. Before we get into talking about your journey as a doula and all of the wonderful things you've been doing and what you've learned so far, I always like to ask people, why Iowa? What brought you here?
Wow. So why Iowa, what brought me here? So honestly, I was an individual that was experiencing homelessness.
Okay.
I wasn't in a shelter or living in my vehicle, but I was couch surfing with an infant.
Mm-hmm.
An invitation was extended to me to come to Iowa. And because I was in a really unsafe and unstable environment in Illinois, I accepted it. So I'm going to give you the condensed version because it's a little bit longer, but feel free to interject and ask some clarifying questions. And so when the invitation was extended, I immediately jumped on it. So when it came to Iowa, I applied for subsidized housing with a couple of, income-based housing, I guess you can say housing complexes in Iowa City. And I was approved. And once I was approved, I knew I had to take it because I needed stable and consistent housing for my daughter. So that is really what drove me to Iowa. Now, when I say I was extended an invitation to come to Iowa, the invitation was by my boyfriend, who is my husband now. So we were high school sweethearts. I stayed in Chicago after graduation and went to the University of Illinois at Chicago. He went to the University of Iowa because both of his older brothers went to the University of Iowa.
Okay.
So he was the invitation to come to Iowa. So when I was in Chicago, again, really unsafe, unstable situation. My mother had mental health issues and substance abuse disorder. And I just really knew that I didn't want to stay there and it wouldn't be in the best interest. And so he extended the invitation. I came to Iowa, applied for the housing, it was accepted. And that's kind of the condensed version, and the rest is history. And that's how I ended up in Iowa City.
Okay. And, I really love that story because I feel like a lot of people, especially like when we look at the Midwest, right? You look at Chicago, Illinois, St. Louis, Kansas City, then over to Omaha, then you go up to Minneapolis and then Milwaukee, right? Everyone kind of forgets this little circle in the middle that is Iowa. And I've noticed too, a lot of Black people actually do migrate from here, from a lot of those cities. And I think on this podcast alone, you're like the third or fourth person that's from Chicago.
Wow.
So yeah, like it's definitely one of those places. And a lot of the times, from what I've understood, it's the invite. It's someone that's already here and they are doing really well. And what I really love too about your quote, cost of living and the serenity of Iowa. Those two things, I tell people, I've lived all over the country. I tell people all the time, Iowa is the best kept secret in the Midwest. Because I talked to a friend of mine that lives out in California and she was like, oh, trying to find an apartment, but a 2-bedroom is like $3,000. I was like, excuse me? What?
Right. Exactly.
What do you mean? Like, what do you mean? Like, is that like the deposit? And then, cause I have a 2-bedroom, 2-bath and it's $1,200. So that's wild to me.
Right. Absolutely.
So with you being from Chicago then, I mean, did you ever have a desire to go back? And if not, then what were the things kind of that you've already talked about, but specifically like what really kept you here?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I came to Iowa, I used to have this joke that I was coming here to do my time and leaving. That was my kind of my joke. I was going to do my time and leave,
it's
because
not prison.
But I would say at the time in 1995 and 1996 in Iowa City, the whole city revolved around the University of Iowa. The whole, it has grown and transformed by leaps and bounds now. But at the time, it was really a college town and it was just a place that I didn't want to raise my daughter. Iowa City wasn't really diverse at that time. So that was a concern because, growing up in Chicago, I grew up in an environment where everyone looked like me, my doctor, the police officers, the principal. And so I was really kind of concerned about that because I know representation matters And I didn't feel like that she would get that in Iowa City.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing is that I didn't have any family in Iowa.
Mm.
And so, and although my family, had his ways and was a little dysfunctional at time, it's nothing like family. And I wanted to be, closer to my family. So
Mm-hmm.
initially I was going to, come here, do my time. And by doing my time, I meant, go to school, graduate, and then be
Mm-hmm.
able to go back to, Chicago or a suburb of Chicago. But one of the things that kept me was some of the things that I mentioned before, the cost of living and
Mm-hmm.
the serenity. When I would go back and visit relatives in Chicago, it was just a change of pace. And this, although I questioned whether I wanted to raise my daughter in Iowa, I really questioned whether I wanted to raise my daughter in Chicago.
Yeah.
From a
Right.
safety perspective, cost of living perspective, I knew that she would get a quality education in Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have to enroll her in private school that,
Yeah.
she
Yep.
wasn't going to be bound by her zip code in terms of,
Mm-hmm.
what school district she got into and the quality of that.
Mm-hmm.
And just from a safety perspective, I just really, I just felt like staying in Iowa was the best decision.
Mm-hmm.
I came to Iowa as a single individual. Me and my childhood sweetheart got married, and so by that time I was married, and
Yeah.
then we graduated and started working, and
Mm-hmm.
then had another child. And then at that point in time, it was just, oh, Iowa was home, and
Yeah.
it was no longer that joke of doing our time. It was like this is our home. This is where we want to be at.
Right. And I tell people all the time, for someone like me who's born and raised here, I always tell people, especially now that I'm in higher ed, I got students all the time, and they're like, well, Miss M, like, should I go to Iowa State? Should I go to Iowa? And I'm like, to be honest, get out of the state.
Mm,
Seriously, get out of the state, go somewhere else. You can
yes,
always come home.
right.
But at the
Mhm.
same time, I really love hearing stories of people finding home here
Yeah.
and building community. And I think that that is incredibly important. And I feel like that really speaks to your story. But before
Hmm.
we get into that, tell
Okay.
me about being an adult student and going to the University of Iowa. What was that transition
Wow.
like for you? I'm assuming you had a young daughter at the
Hmm.
time, newly
Absolutely.
married, or at least with your sweetheart at
Yeah.
the time. And then it's like, okay, I'm here. Now I want to go to school and pursue my undergraduate degree. So, what was that journey like for you, being a young mom and really taking ownership of your education like that?
It was kind of like I had tunnel vision.
Mm-hmm.
My focus was on, providing a better life for my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just like I was just kind of locked in, as the young people say, and it was by any means necessary.
Yeah.
So there was, it was hard. I'm not going to, sugarcoat it. It was hard. It was a lot of, sleepless nights. And, I didn't have the quote unquote regular college experience,
Mm-hmm.
because I had to be a mom. So, part of it was that yearning, to be young and to be free and to be able to, have the traditional college experience. But then it was also that I knew that I had to be a mom. And because I don't have family here, I couldn't drop my baby off at
Yeah.
grandma's or
Yep.
aunties.
Yeah.
I had to buckle down and do it. And so I would say the experience really made me strong and resilient and
Mm-hmm.
resourceful. It really strengthened the bond between my partner and I because of the fact we were all we had.
Yeah.
And before we had a car, we would take public transportation. And anybody knows about Iowa City Transit, it runs on a schedule every
Mm-hmm.
half an hour, then every hour during rush hour. And so there were times where I would literally be getting off of the bus
Mm-hmm.
and he would, transition like
Yeah.
there to me, and he would get on
Yeah.
the bus and
Okay.
we would, we just had to work it out.
Right.
We just worked it out. Like I said, it was hard. I don't want to sugarcoat it.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times I was in tunnel vision, and I just kind of had the mindset just to get it done.
Mm-hmm.
It was end goal was not just about me. It was something that I knew I had to do in order to create a better life for my daughter. So
Mm-hmm.
I did take a slight break. So, when my mother passed away, I just needed a moment to kind of regroup. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember I was working full time at the Broadway Neighborhood Center,
Okay.
and they cut my Medicaid because I made too much money. But I
Mm.
didn't qualify for health insurance because I wasn't a full-time employee.
Mm-hmm.
So I had taken another job at Four Oaks, and because I was really thinking about social work at the time. And I remember just working overnights and being totally exhausted and not having a day off, but one of my days off to get the overtime because otherwise I just didn't have any money to live on.
Yeah.
And I knew I needed to further my education because I knew that without it, it just wasn't going to work well for me.
I think you do have to really have that drive when it kind of seems like you're on the hamster wheel,
Hmm.
right? And it's just like, okay, if I keep doing the same thing, nothing is going to change.
Absolutely.
I'm really in awe of you to not only have gotten to Iowa and you're like, okay, well, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to get this degree. But then
Mhm.
you had the audacity to go and get two masters as well.
I did. I
So
did.
tell me, and for me, I'm in my master's program right now,
Hmm.
and by God, I am going to be done in December.
I hear you.
And I decided I waited 14 years to go
Hmm.
back to school. And every once in a while when I'm in my apartment and I'm trying to get this paper done or I get home late, oh, I got to do my discussion questions. I really be looking
Hmm.
around like, who told me to do this? Cuz
Yeah,
this is ridiculous, but you went back twice.
I did.
So tell me about what was two, 2003 when you got your undergrad, and then we got first master's in 2012, second one in 2018, right?
Hmm. Correct.
So what is happening in Latoya's life during that time frame?
So the first one was honestly, my husband had gotten ill. He was
Mm,
diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and
hmm
he was the primary breadwinner. And so I started to think about how could I increase, our household income.
hmm
And, I like to learn. If I could open up a t-shirt shop or if I could bake or, but I just felt like, I just don't, that's just not my calling. Like I just don't have
hmm
that talent, but I do love
Right.
to learn. And so that was the motivation behind going back to school because I felt like, at the time it was just so much that was unknown in terms of his
hmm
diagnosis and the autoimmune disease. And so he's fine now. He's totally healthy now. But
Okay.
at the time we just really didn't know. And he did have to
Right.
leave the job that actually brought us to Des Moines. So we were in
Mm,
Iowa City. We moved
hmm
to Des Moines in 2005 when he
Okay.
was working for Aldi Foods at the time, and
Okay.
he was offered a manager. So he did have to leave that job. And so
hmm
considering that he was the primary breadwinner, he had to leave that job. And I was looking at opportunities on how we could increase the household income. And again, I felt like I didn't have any, talents in other areas, but I love to learn. And
hmm
so that was my decision to go back to school. I didn't necessarily want to get a master's in social work only because I was so burnt out at the time.
Yeah.
But I wanted to kind of keep, kind of straddle the fence a little bit, keep,
hmm
1 foot into that government programs. And so that's when I went to school to get a master's in public administration.
hmm
And then fast forward, when I decided to go to school again, I was working for United Healthcare, and that was the time around the time our governor decided to privatize Medicaid. And so they had a pretty good tuition reimbursement program,
hmm
and I just really felt like I connected with health administration,
hmm
because I kind of felt like it gave me the best of both worlds. I could kind of get out in the community a little bit, but I wasn't doing that direct service. But
hmm
I really was able to experience the joy and the benefits of doing some of that behind the scene work because all I
Okay.
had ever known was, the boots on the ground. But,
Right.
being able to work behind the scenes on programs and policies and
hmm
workflows and seeing the end result on
Yeah.
the individuals you served, I just really love that.
Right. We always have an idea of how things work, but until we actually pull back the curtain,
Yes,
we have no idea. And
absolutely.
I really applaud you for that, especially when it comes to healthcare, because
Mhm.
your knowledge, you are able to give that, especially to the Black community here in Des Moines, just because we are very much underserved and underrepresented here. So the
Mhm.
more people that we can get behind the scenes is definitely helpful. And, I know that this is gonna lead us into the conversation
Yeah, absolutely.
of becoming a doula. So again, you've already stated you love to learn. So
Mhm.
we've learned social work, we've learned about public administration, we've learned about health administration, the background work that goes into healthcare and what it looks like when Medicaid is privatized,
Right.
which ladies and gentlemen, please make sure you just do your research and know who you're voting for. Because,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
all right, that's all I'm going to say on that one.
Okay.
But what was there like a defining moment or a reason or something that drove you to becoming a doula? And for those that don't
Mhm.
know, can you explain a little bit about the purpose of a doula and the meaning behind having that person um, helping someone through the stages of childbirth?
Yeah, absolutely. So a doula is an individual that provides emotional and physical support and advocacy for a birthing individual. So really the way that I like to look at it is I walk beside the birthing individual. I'm there to educate. So one of the acronyms that I teach all of my birthing I'm going to go back and forth between moms and individuals just to kind
Yeah.
of be inclusive. But that I teach all of my birthing moms is the acronym B.R.A.I.N. So anytime you're in a physician's office or faced with a provider and they're maybe throwing out some suggestions to alternatives, always ask them, what are the benefits of what you're recommending? Are
Hmm.
there any risks? What are some alternatives? And then the I is for intuition,
Hmm.
and then the N is for no. So what if I just decide not to do that? Because
Hmm.
oftentimes when we're faced with, you know, a provider and they're giving us information, your mind is going and you're not thinking about
Right.
what questions to ask. So if you can remember brain, benefits, risk, alternatives, listen to your intuition is the I, and no, that'll kind of help you in terms of navigating the conversation. So to go back to your question, is an individual that provides emotional, physical support and
Hmm.
advocacy for a birthing individual that really walks beside them, provides that education, and helps them to be able to make informed decisions and
Hmm.
advocate for themselves so that way they're able to have a successful birth.
Hmm. Okay, that's awesome. And so, what was kind of that determining factor for you to say, I have all of this knowledge, but now this is what I want to do?
Okay, so I'm really into garden analogies right now. And
Okay.
I think it was a series of events, honestly. So I like to say that the ground was tilled when I had my daughter.
Hmm.
And I know most, individuals are emotional when they have their baby, but
Hmm.
I cried and, when they put her on my chest, I just really, it was just an out of body phenomenal experience. And I noticed
Hmm.
that not only with when I had my daughter, but when I was present for friends' births, I was just always in awe
Hmm.
about the miracle of birth. And I feel
Hmm.
like the seed was planted, honestly, when I was working at the House of Mercy. So I was working at the In Touch with Teens unit. And
Okay.
at the time, that was the only facility that allowed teenage moms that were teenage moms or expecting teens to be in a residential, treatment facility.
Okay.
And so, because of the boundaries, staff weren't allowed to go with the teen moms when they would give birth. And so we would
Mm.
really encourage them to sign up for one of the volunteer doulas at Mercy to be able to guide them on their birthing journey and to be there to provide that support. And when
Hmm.
I learned about the program at Mercy, I was just really in awe, like, wow, what a wonderful opportunity to be able to support these birthing moms
Yeah.
and help them. And I was just, it just kind of pulled at my heartstrings.
Hmm. Well, and I'm sorry to interrupt,
Yeah,
but so
no,
you
you're
said
fine.
that the program, so essentially, teen mom is about to give birth, and so it's literally just her, the doctor, and the nurse, no support.
No support.
You
Because
know,
oftentimes they would be
I
from Clear
just,
Lake or Dubuque or Waterloo,
yeah,
and sometimes families just didn't have the resources to be
right,
able to
to be
come
able to
and to be
come,
there. And
right.
so if we didn't provide them with the option to have a volunteer doula, that teen would be by herself giving
Yeah.
birth.
I couldn't imagine. I mean,
No,
you
I
are
couldn't either.
already in a teenage state.
My
You are
gosh,
already going through
yes.
all of these emotions. And now I have to bring this child into the world
Mhm.
by myself. I mean, I get nervous when I go to Costco by myself, and I'm almost 40. So I
Absolutely,
couldn't
yeah.
imagine being a 15, 16-year-old girl and this is
Mhm.
the next thing. Wow. And way to kudos for that program, but also
Yeah.
you seeing the need for it and wanting to share
Yeah.
your knowledge and really advocate for those girls. That's incredible.
Mhm. And then I would say, fast forward a few years later, I was actually just last year, really, I was driving to a leadership program and, the just thought came, you should really look into becoming a doula. And I would say even before then, when I found out the requirements of becoming a doula, it went from this wonderful concept and opportunity to, wow, this could be possible for me.
Mhm.
But, the timing was just always
Yeah.
not right,
Right. Yep.
So when I was driving to the leadership program, you know how the thought came, you should really look into this again. And so, thought came and, went out and about my day. When I got home, I just was mindlessly scrolling on Facebook trying to,
Hmm.
decompress. And I saw that every step had a doula program and they were looking for doulas. And I'm just like, I
Hmm.
just had this thought earlier today. And so I called them and was accepted into the program. And
Hmm.
then at the time, my son was graduating from high school, and the timing again just seemed like, my gosh,
Yeah.
just wasn't right. And then I was laid off. This was before I started working with Melina. And I said, okay,
Okay.
Lord, I
That
see
if
what
that was the sign, that
I
was
see
it,
what you're
right?
doing. Because the timing
Yeah.
was just never right. And so it was just a perfect just opportunity. And then at the time I had, already was done with graduate school. And so I knew about the disparities around maternal health and the statistics.
Hmm.
And I just felt like it was just destined to be. It was just a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So as you're going through this program and this journey, I mean, I feel like with you already working with these teens and
Mhm.
supporting them and advocating, when you went through the program, what were some things that you might not have realized
Mhm.
about the necessity of a doula, but you feel also kind of validated why divine intervention in the universe is
Mhm.
telling you to go this route? What are maybe some of those kind of like
Yeah.
aha things during your training?
I don't know if the aha moment really came from the training, but from my very first birth.
Mm.
There was some eye-opening statistics that came from the training, nevertheless, especially when we look at the origins of doulas and how they, originated and how they kind of got pushed out,
Mhm.
when it started to be kind of, I guess you can say, colonized. But it was really my very first birth, or maybe not even, just really seeing the difference and from what the mom told me she had experienced
Mhm.
to being there and seeing a difference in how she was treated.
Mm.
And I'm like, you have got to be kidding me.
Mhm.
You mean to tell me that when this beautiful, intelligent Black woman comes in by herself, she's treated one way. But then when she comes with me and I give you my business card and you see the letters behind my name, all of a sudden she's treated with the dignity and respect
Mm.
that she deserved. That was
Mm.
one of the things that just really was eye opening, just kind of pulled at my heartstrings because everybody needs to be treated with dignity and respect, and
Right.
they need to be heard and validated in their concerns. So it was just really an eye opener in terms of, how Black women were being treated,
Right.
how they were being viewed, how they were being dismissed
Mhm.
and disregard. And you heard about it, but it wasn't until I was able to, see it
Mhm.
firsthand
Mhm.
that I really saw the need of really, walking beside the individual and really teaching them how to advocate for themselves and what questions to ask.
Right. Right. Absolutely. And I've never had a child, but the majority of my friends that have children now, they had doulas. Their experiences were, I would say, a lot better than maybe even
Mhm.
like some of my friends that had kids 10, 12 years ago,
Right.
because they had the doula and it wasn't so much, well, I don't know what to do, but it was almost like
Mhm.
even when they would go to their appointments by themselves, they would tell me, I feel like I was able to advocate for myself more
Mhm.
because of the things my doula told me.
Right.
And it's another way to have someone validate you and say, it's okay to
Mhm.
let the doctor or the nurse know what's good for you and what's not. And just as Black women in general, I mean, historically, I mean, we're not protected by anyone really, but also especially in the medical field,
Mhm.
we have to be very stern and we have to
Absolutely.
be serious. And I mean, I think the eye opener for a lot of people was during when Serena Williams had her first baby, and she
Yes.
kept telling them, I am prone
Mhm.
to blood clots, and they would not believe her, won't believe her.
Mhm.
And then what happened? You know what I mean? So I think, just the advocacy in the medical field is so important. And I really appreciate that there are people like you out there that are assisting, especially since infant mortality rates are so high in the Black community.
Yes.
So I want to kind of transition a little bit because I feel like a lot of the people that listen to this show, they want to do something or go
Mm-hmm.
into business for themselves. Going into business for yourself, I think, is one thing, but when you go into business about something you are passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
it's a really interesting idea. Like, because even with me in this podcast, I am very laser focused on the podcast and the content, but at the same time, I do know in the background there is a certain monetary value that has to be assessed with
Mm-hmm.
this.
Yes.
And especially for someone like you, there is a whole other level of entrepreneurship that also
Mm-hmm.
happens. Can you tell me a little bit about how, you're merging passion with business and maybe one or two things that you might want other people to think about when they're thinking about going on their doula journey?
Yeah, so both journeys are very new to me, being an entrepreneur and being a doula. So I'm very fortunate and that it feels organic and everything
Mm-hmm.
just seems to be lining up the way that maybe it's supposed to be. I would say for me, self-care has been huge.
Mm,
Just really making sure that I'm staying in my lane, remembering that my only competition is me,
yes.
giving myself grace, especially on those days when I'm only checking off one or two tasks off
Mm-hmm.
my to-do list or no tasks at all, if I'm going to be honest.
Right.
And so that has really been helpful for me. I would say for those that are really looking to maybe explore birth work or looking to do doula work, to really to approach it the same way they would any other interest that they have. If they're an individual that is spiritual, maybe pray about it, meditate about it.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, do your research in terms of what doulas do, the different types of doulas, so then that way you can know kind of where your lane is.
Mm-hmm.
Also, talk to other doulas, find out the pros and the cons, because it
Mm-hmm.
is hard work. There are long days and it's not always, you're not always seeing a return on investment. So you really have to have a strong why
Mm-hmm.
as into why you're doing the work, because
Mm-hmm.
you're going to have to leverage that more than you would probably like.
Yeah. Yep, absolutely. And the giving yourself grace part and the self care part.
Hmm.
I feel like, sometimes when it comes to us doing our own things and
Yeah,
being entrepreneurs and really being passionate about what we have going on, we forget to take breaks. We
absolutely.
forget to even say no to ourselves.
Hmm.
There have been many a times where I've been on this, on my laptop and I'm like, wait, 4 hours have gone by and I haven't taken the dog
Hmm.
out. Let
Right.
me go.
Yeah.
Or even, let me just
Hmm.
go scroll TikTok for a bit because,
Yes.
I can't get this one editing mechanism working. So I think that that is really important. And then one more question before we
Absolutely.
wrap things up for today is, Mahogany Doula Services is here. You are present
Hmm.
on social media.
Yes.
For you, where do you see Mahogany Doula Services in, say, 5 years? What type of impact would
Hmm.
you like to see your business have on the community here in Des Moines?
Yeah, absolutely. So, one of the things that I'm really into is, whole person care, and really, so what I would really like to do is just really look at some different partnership opportunities. So when I'm being able to serve women, really being able to serve every part of them, the whole person care. So really being able to connect them with the mental health resources that they need
Mm-hmm.
to be able to to connect them with social supports if that is something that they have a need for. I was just talking to someone today by way of email who does financial services. So really even
Mm-hmm.
kind of incorporating that, especially if you're a new mom, a new parent, if
Right.
you don't have life insurance, that's something that you need to be considering,
Mm-hmm.
and, financial wellness. So really just really looking at how I can, incorporate those services into what I'm doing in
Mm-hmm.
more of a wellness space.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, ideally, because I love to learn and I love to teach, is really looking at, opportunities to be able to provide, education to health professionals in
Mm-hmm.
terms of, how they can better serve individuals from our community.
Right. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. That's great. And Toya, I feel like the minute I met you, I was like, yeah, that's someone I want to get to know for sure.
Likewise.
So I met Latoya at the Power Conference
Yes.
or the Power Summit earlier this year, and
Mm-hmm.
kind of got to talking a little bit about what she does. And then we ran into a gal named Veronica that you are friends with that I met, and we all
Mm-hmm.
have the same stylist.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So shout out to
Yes.
Grip Queen
Yes.
Ashley
Keep
Bell, who
it
will be on the
going.
show at some point because that's my best friend. But it's
Mhm.
really just the interconnectedness. And I feel
Yes.
like even in that moment, I was like, wow, she's really doing something positive, because I mean, I can't imagine how scary it is to go through childbirth, but also the idea
Mhm.
of not having someone there to support you.
Absolutely.
And it's really nice to know that people like you are out there so women don't have to go through these things alone.
Yeah.
And then it's not necessarily, okay, here's the baby, have fun. It's all of the things leading up to the birth and all the things
Mhm.
you need to be thinking about after the child is here, which I think is really
Yeah.
important. Very, very blessed and happy that you were on the show today. And before we wrap up, I always like to make sure that you have the opportunity to let people know where they can find you, how they can get in contact with you for
Absolutely.
doula services, or maybe even to pick your brain. This woman has 3 degrees, so she knows a lot. So please let the people know where they can find you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am on Facebook, the Mahogany Doula Services, and Instagram, the Mahogany Doula. So web page is going to be going up pretty soon. So
Okay.
if you just like and follow me on Facebook, again, Mahogany Doula Services, or on Instagram, the Mahogany Doula, you will be notified when the website launches. You can also reach me by email, and that is Latoya Lewis at mahoganydoulaservices.com. Again, Latoya Lewis at mahoganydoulaservices.com.
Okay. Awesome. And I will be sure to have all of that wonderful information in the show notes.
Okay.
Latoya, again, thank you so much for being
Thank
here.
you. Thank you.
I at this point, with so many people that I have on the show coming up from Chicago, we're just gonna have to have a Chicago shout out show where just
Yes, I
everybody
love
talks,
that.
because I feel like people from Chicago are a lot like people from Des Moines that went to Roosevelt High School. Once
I
we
can
get
see
going
that.
talking about it, we're not gonna stop.
I can see that.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Ask me how I know, because I went to Roosevelt High School.
Yes.
But anyway,
Mhm.
all right, everyone. So, again, Latoya, thank you.
Thank
And for the
you.
listeners, I will be back here in a minute to wrap up the episode and to give you guys a preview on the next show. So I'll
All
be back.
right. Thanks again.
All right, everyone. So again, thank you so much to Latoya Lewis of Mahogany Doula Services for having that amazing conversation with me. Latoya is somebody that I ran into kind of randomly, and then through connections with other people, I was like, wow, this is definitely someone that I want to get to know. And whenever I see her around town, she just has this aura and this really beautiful smile on her face. And it I always get excited to see her. So if you guys see Miss Latoya Lewis around town, around the city of Des Moines or anywhere else, please stop, shake her hand, say hello to her. Again, she has an amazing story, and I'm so happy that she took the time to share that with us on this episode. So a couple of things that I do want to talk about that were really big takeaways for me were really two. And one of the primary ones was how she is influencing her clients and being a doula to really emphasize the B.R.A.I.N acronym. So B.R.A.I.N being B, benefits of recommendations. Are there any risks? The A, what are some alternatives? I, listen to your intuition and say no. So while yes, she's definitely using that acronym for her clients as they are getting ready to go through childbirth and child labor and either become mothers for the first time or again. I really think that acronym can be used in a lot of different areas. And as I kind of talked about a little bit in the intro, remember, I'm recording this on the National Day of Rest for Black women. How can I utilize B.R.A.I.N as I look at different things that I might want to do? And how can I really advocate not only to others, but to myself, why I might need rest? I think that that was kind of what I pulled from this conversation. And it was really important because, kind of like what I've said it so many times. I feel like the 24-hour woman all the time. And the crazy thing is, if I feel like the 24-hour woman with a dog, a full-time job, and family, I cannot imagine how some other women feel with a dog, a full-time job, multiple kids, a husband, and a bunch of other community obligations that they have to do all the time. So I think that B.R.A.I.N is really important, especially for me moving forward as I take my 39th trip around the sun, especially the say no part. I have a tendency to say yes to everything, but 10 out of 10 times, I just want to stay at the house and I don't want to do anything. And so I just really need to make sure that I'm advocating for myself. So that way, if it's, hey, I do want to do this, let's go ahead, move forward and prosper. Great. But if not, I don't necessarily have to. And really, if there's not a benefit to the recommendation, if I haven't identified the risks, if there aren't any alternatives, and if my intuition is telling me to say no, then I'm just going to go ahead and do that. So that's something that I really took away from the conversation with Latoya. The last thing that I took away from the conversation with Latoya is remembering self-care, especially if you are someone that is out here as an entrepreneur, if you are someone that is in a higher ranking position with another company. We have to remember to take care of ourselves, you guys. And that's one of the reasons why this National Day of Rest for Black women was so incredibly important, I think, to a lot of people. I know for myself, again, I feel like I don't really rest all that well. I oftentimes feel like for me to rest, I have this idea of rest being that I just need to sit and do nothing. I can't never do nothing. I'm always having to do something. And that's really just like that part of my brain that does things that calm me down, whether it's working on a diamond art painting, whether it's reading, whether it's coloring, something to where I don't have to put a lot of time and attention into and I can just do. It's going to be really important. But something that Latoya said really resonated with me. And she said that as she's going through and, she's on this journey of being a doula, but also of being an entrepreneur, she said that she needs to remember to give myself grace because I'm not in competition with anyone. How many times do you wake up and feel like if I don't get this one thing done, someone else is going to do it before me? But the real question is, who are you competing with? Who else is there that is going to steal your shine or take your idea or anything like that? I think competition is out there, but I also think too that especially now, if the competition is really out there, it's really within yourself and you're continuously trying to prove yourself to make sure that you can do something, to really tell yourself, I can do this. I know I can. I have everything that it takes. But to consistently feel like we're always in competition with somebody else, I don't want to go through my life feeling like that anymore. And I feel like that a lot. I always feel like I'm in competition when really I'm not. Even with this podcast is my baby. I'm not in competition with anyone. I felt the need to share a story, and that's exactly what I'm doing. But who am I competing with? No one. And that's okay. I don't want to compete with anybody. If anything, I want to bring people in and let everyone have the opportunity to share their story in this area, in this platform. So those are just some of the things that I took away from this episode that I had with Latoya. Again, thank you so much, Latoya, for being on the show. A couple of things about the podcast, you guys. So first and foremost, there are only, after today, 3 episodes left in season 1. I'm going to repeat that. There are only 3 episodes left in season 1, you guys. By the time the season 1 wraps up, which it will wrap up with a very special episode that I'm not going to tell you anything about on Monday, March 31st, I will have 36 episodes under my belt. 36 episodes. Over 30 hours of conversations with amazing people and of me sharing my personal story. This is really big, and I am so excited for everyone that has supported me on this journey and been a part of the show up to this point. So I'm really excited to get these last episodes out to you and that special episode at the end. If you do want more Black Girl Iowa, don't forget I do have a website, www.blackgirliowa.com. You can also follow me over on TikTok and Instagram at Black Girl Iowa. You can also, if you want some merch, I do have t-shirts, sweatshirts that are available for pre-order at Black Girl Iowa Shop on Etsy. All of that information will be linked in the description below. The next two episodes, you guys are going to be really great. On next week's episode, guys, I have Deidre DeGier on. She will be talking about her run for governor a couple of years ago here in the state of Iowa and some really awesome things that she is doing here in the Des Moines area, including a couple of drives for kids for school supplies and also the upcoming Ladylike Power Summit happening in May. So again, thank you so much for being here, you guys. Signing off this week, Emily from Black Girl Iowa. I hope you guys all have a fantastic day and even better week. And I will see you guys on the next one. All right. Bye.